now we will move on to the next portion. So, the next portion is how do you improve the creep resistance of materials. Now, the significance of this portion is as follows. So, we have learnt about creep, we understood how a creep curve looks like, how a creep curve can be modeled, what are the different mechanisms of plastic deformation that influence creep, how is the creep curve dependent on how dislocation motion leads to creep, or how diffusion of vacancies leads to creep. So, we learned all that, and then we also talked about how you can model the useful life, creep life of a material using all this knowledge. So, Larsen-Miller parameter and the theta projection concept or the continuum damage mechanics approach. So, all these things we spoke about. Of course, having said that, the important thing to remember is engineers by all means would like to limit the amount of creep deformation happening, because higher the amount of creep, faster is the progress of material on the path of failure, and also if you have more amount of creep, you are also going to lose the dimensional stability of your component. So, on account of this, what is important is, having now known how creep happens, let us talk about ways of limiting the amount of creep deformation or improving the creep resistance of materials. So, towards the end I will be providing you a few examples, and these are very selected examples. There is a lot of literature available on this topic. I have just picked up a few examples just to demonstrate the importance of different parameters for creep resistance or for improving the creep resistance of materials. So, the first parameter is the grain size or the microstructure of the material. Now, you can manipulate or tailor the grain size and microstructure of a material to improve the creep resistance. Let us take the example of grain size. Now, if you know from the Bird-Mukherjee-Dawn equation, epsilon dot kT by dGb is equal to A B by D to the power p and sigma by G to the power n. So, what this basically means is epsilon dot is proportional to d to the power minus p. So, d is equal to grain size. So, clearly if d increases, epsilon dot is going to come down. So, which means this implies that increasing the grain size will lead to reduction in the creep strain rate of deformation, hence larger grain sized materials will bear superior creep resistance compared to fine grained materials. So, that is one of the key takeaways of this equation, that you can play with your grain size to improve the, or you can increase your grain size to improve the creep resistance of your material. So, that is one thing. Now, what is the role of microstructure? So, again microstructure also plays a very important role, and here is an example from titanium alloys. This is titanium 1100 alloy, and the authors are talking about the creep behavior of two different microstructures of this material. So, in one case you could have a lamellar microstructure, in another case you could have bimodal microstructure. Here are couple of pictures to tell you what a bimodal microstructure, what we understand by a bimodal microstructure and what we understand by a fully lamellar microstructure. So, these microstructures can be attained based on suitable heat treatments. So, your heat treatment will decide what kind of microstructure you achieve. So, what the authors are what is being shown in this slide is the lamellar microstructure is providing a higher creep resistance compared to the bimodal microstructure. So, let us take time t 10 hours. So, if you see at 10 hours time, the lamellar microstructure has probably deformed to 0.35% strain, whereas the bimodal microstructure has deformed to probably 0.65% strain. So, which means the bimodal microstructure is more amenable to creep deformation compared to the lamellar microstructure. Now, the reason for this is the lamellar microstructure, as you can see from the microstructure, there is a fine spacing of lamella and the lamellar boundaries. So, the boundaries between the lamellae, they act as geometrical obstacles to dislocation motion. So, what happens is the dislocations find it difficult to overcome these boundaries, and as a result plastic deformation is controlled and in the process you have higher creep resistance. On the other hand, in a bimodal microstructure you have this single phase alpha, and you also have this lamellar microstructure. Now, the single phase alpha, it is like a grain, and there are no real boundaries except for the phase boundary between or for the phase boundary between alpha and the lamellar microstructure. So, the dislocations find it lot easier to travel there, because the mean free length available for the dislocation to move is higher in the bimodal microstructure in comparison to the lamellar microstructure. That is why bimodal microstructure is allowing greater creep strain compared to the lamellar microstructure. So, this is an example of how microstructure can influence the creep behavior of your material. Now, let us look at another case. Let us look at the influence of elastic modulus. So, this is from the review paper of Kastner from Progress in Material Science. So, Kastner and Perez-Prado, they basically talk about the influence of elastic modulus. This is a graph that we discussed even earlier. So, when we were talking about the role of elastic modulus. So, what this graph is telling you is, as your elastic modulus or your shear modulus is increasing, the amount of stress required to generate a certain creep strain rate is also increasing. So, in this case they are talking about a creep strain rate of the order of 10 to the power 9. So, dimensionless creep strain rate, no, they are talking about creep strain rate normalized with a DSD, which is self diffusivity, and for to achieve a particular value of this parameter, the amount of stress required is increasing as the shear modulus of the material is increasing, which means you will need to apply higher stresses for materials which have higher elastic modulus. Hence, for creep sensitive applications, if you have to choose a material, so it is going to be, it is better to choose a material that has high elastic modulus, because that will ensure that the amount of creep deformation that you get in the process is going to be limited versus vis-a-vis a low elastic modulus material. So, that is what this plot is suggesting. In another plot in the same paper by Kastner and Perez-Prado, they also talk about the role of stacking fault energy. So, if you look at the normalized strain rate versus stacking fault energy normalized by GB, what is clearly emerging is, as this term increases, the strain rate of deformation or the normalized strain rate is also increasing. So, epsilon dot KT by dGB increases when the stacking fault energy, normalized stacking fault energy is increasing. So, what this basically means is, if your stacking fault energy is high, then your creep resistance is going to be low. Now, let us look at this. So, stacking fault energy is basically corresponding to the energy between the two partial dislocations. So, if you have two partial dislocations and the area bounded by these two partial dislocations is the stacking fault energy. Now, let us look at the case of aluminum, which we know has a high stacking fault energy. It has around 200 millijoule per meter square. So, on account of the high stacking fault energy, actually aluminum finds it difficult to develop any stacking faults, which means the formation of partials or the separation of a single dislocation, dissociation of a single dislocation into two partials is actually difficult in aluminum compared to copper. So, in aluminum, that is why you see a lot of cross slip. The dislocation finds it easy to move from one plane to another plane and does not have to form any stacking faults. On the other hand, in copper you see a lot of stacking fault formation, because in copper the stacking fault energy is around 80 millijoule per meter square. So, if you see, copper has lower creep strain rate of deformation compared to that of aluminum. That means, copper is more resistant to creep deformation. Now, the role of stacking fault is coming up even nicely when we compare copper to its alloys. So, if you look at copper versus copper 10 zinc or 20 zinc, etc., if you see, the stacking fault energy is coming down further. So, for copper at that level, as you keep going down, as you increase the zinc content, the stacking fault energy is coming down, and as the stacking fault energy is coming down further, you are seeing further improvement in creep resistance. So, the strain rate of deformation is continuing to come down. So, what this tells us is, by choosing the right elements, alloying elements, you can play around with the stacking fault energy of the material, and by reducing the stacking fault energy you can reduce this creep strain rate of deformation, or in other words you can improve the creep resistance of the material. So, that is the effect of stacking fault. Let us look at another aspect. So, this is about improving the creep resistance of material by introducing some second phases into the matrix. So, the second phase either could be dispersions or it could be fibers. So, this is a microstructure of titanium 6 aluminum 4 vanadium with a dispersion of titanium carbide precipitates, and this is another case where it is titanium 6 aluminum 4 vanadium reinforced with silicon carbide fibers. These microstructures are for the sake of illustration to tell you how a fiber reinforced system would look like and how a particle reinforced system would look like. Now, let us look at the creep performance of these materials reinforced with either particles, hard particles or hard fibers. So, these are basically titanium matrix composites. So, you can call them as a composite because you have added the second phase, it is a composite. So, what this plot is telling you is that titanium matrix composites have higher creep resistance. So, this data corresponds to titanium 6 aluminum 4 vanadium, whereas all this data corresponds to the composites titanium 6 aluminum 4 vanadium composites. So, if you look at the data, to achieve a certain creep strain rate, let us say 10 to the power minus 3, to achieve that creep strain rate, let us look at the stress levels required for Ti64 and Ti64 composites. So, clearly to achieve a creep strain rate of 10 to the power minus 3, Ti64 may need around 200 MPa applied stress, whereas the composites will require at least 800 to 900 MPa applied stress. So, the composites require higher applied stress to produce the same strain rate of deformation. So, naturally there is an improvement in the performance of the titanium 6 aluminum 4 vanadium by the introduction of these particle strengtheners or the fiber strengtheners. Let us also look at another example. So, here you have silicon carbide fibers reinforced titanium 24 aluminum 11 niobium alloy, and in one case they tested the samples along the longitudinal along the length of the fibers, in another case they tested the sample perpendicular to the fibers. So, you have L and T. Now, what you see is the samples with tested along the length of the fibers for the same Larsen-Miller parameter, let us say a Larsen-Miller parameter of 24, or let us look at these alloys. So, you have one, this is the alloy without the fibers and this is the alloy or the composite with fibers. So, clearly the amount of stress required for the alloy without fibers and the alloy with fibers, there is a large difference. So, you need to apply higher stresses. So, the strength of the material with the fibers is higher. So, you need to apply higher stresses to achieve the same rupture life that the alloy without the strengtheners, particle or fiber strengtheners is providing. In this case it is fiber strengthener. So, you have Larsen-Miller parameter versus strength. So, Larsen-Miller parameter will tell you the time or temperature for a given value of 22, the let us say the temperature is constant. So, to achieve a certain rupture life you need higher stresses, you need to apply higher stresses for the composite against the material without the fiber strengtheners. So, that is the impact of adding fibers or dispersoids into a material, and they also improve creep resistance. Now, let us look at the purity of the material. So, this is one example where we are talking about how impurities can lead to deterioration of the creep properties. So, certain impurities can increase the diffusivity of the material, leading to reduction of creep resistance. So, again let us go back to the equation epsilon dot kT by dGB is equal to A B by dP sigma by G n. So, this implies epsilon dot kT or epsilon dot can be written as A d Gb by kT into B by dP sigma by G to the power n. So, epsilon dot is directly proportional to d, which is the diffusivity. So, if d increases, then the strain rate of deformation also increases. So, what has been observed is the presence of certain impurities. For example, even impurities such as iron and nickel at trace levels, that means even at ppm level, when they are present in titanium, it has been found to increase the diffusivity of titanium, and in turn that leads to poor creep performance, because the moment your diffusivity increases, then your strain rate of deformation also increases. So, elements such as iron and nickel, even at small quantities, even in small quantities, tend to deteriorate the creep performance of titanium. So, what happens is when you have these trace elements, the activation energy for diffusion actually comes down. So, d is d naught e to the power minus q over r t. If q comes down, then your d, so d increases when q comes down. So, what happens is when you have these trace elements, they actually reduce the activation energy for diffusion, and because of that, which that in turn increases diffusivity, which in turn increases the strain rate of deformation. So, you need smaller quantities, or you need an alloy, or you need a material which is free of, or you need a titanium alloy which is free of this iron and nickel impurities. So, to illustrate the importance of the iron and nickel impurities, let us look at the data from two titanium alloys. One is Timate 834 and the other one is DMR 834. So, this has high iron nickel and this has low iron nickel. So, clearly the Timate alloy, for the same applied stress, the DMR alloy is giving you around 0.5% creep strain in a time of around 175 hours, whereas the Timate alloy is exhibiting a plastic deformation of around 0.25 creep strain. So, almost half the creep strain provided by DMR alloy. So, this poor creep performance is because of the presence of iron and nickel, which have reduced the activation energy of deformation for the DMR alloy compared to the Timate alloy. So, that is the role of impurities, and so that is why impurities have to be taken into account when you are designing a creep resistant material. You have to be careful that you do not have any impurities which can increase the diffusivity of the material. Let us also talk about the role of alloying additions. So, we talked about impurities, but if you are talking of alloying additions where you are intentionally adding elements into the material with a specific objective in mind, then that can also lead to improvement in creep performance. Let us talk of this nickel based superalloys, where the nickel based superalloys are used in gas turbine engines, especially in the high temperature region, and the reason is these alloys have excellent high temperature strength. So, compared to most materials which experience a drop in strength with increasing temperature, nickel based superalloys continue to retain their strength till higher temperatures, and this is on account of the addition of aluminum and or titanium. The aluminum and titanium elements, when they are added to nickel, they allow the development of a two phase equilibrium microstructure. So, you have a two phase microstructure, the matrix is gamma, and you have a second phase that form which is known as gamma dash. So, this two phase microstructure leads to the development of an excellent creep resistance. So, here the aluminum and titanium addition is actually causing the development of a microstructure which is creep resistant, and the creep resistance comes from the presence of gamma dash, because gamma dash it is an ordered structure, and the gamma dash forms a coherent interface with gamma. So, the coherency strains lead to strengthening of the material to start with. So, that is why gamma dash helps in the improvement in strength of the material, and when in addition to the coherent strains, gamma dash is also a ordered lattice, and because of the ordered nature of the lattice, dislocations find it very difficult to penetrate the gamma dash material. So, it is a strong material on account of the ordered lattice that it has, and so dislocations find it very difficult to move from the matrix, that is gamma, into the gamma dash phase. Furthermore, gamma dash has on account of its ordered lattice structure, the dislocations tend to get locked within the gamma dash matrix at within gamma dash, tend to get locked within gamma dash at higher temperatures, and that has something to do with the antiphase boundary energy of the gamma dash. This is the advantage of generating gamma dash in the nickel matrix. Now, it is also been observed that if you by suitably tailoring the extent of misfit, so gamma and gamma dash, although they have a very good matching, there is still some amount of misfit between the two phases, and if you play around with this misfit, then a raft microstructure, so raft microstructure as shown here, a raft microstructure can be developed within the nickel based superalloy, and what has been observed is this raft microstructure prevents dislocation climb, and because it prevents or restricts dislocation climb, it enables higher creep resistance. So, that is one of the things that can be achieved. So, the raft microstructure that can be achieved by addition of aluminum and titanium and with some suitable heat treatment. This raft microstructure prevents the dislocations from climbing easily and in turn control the creep deformation of the material. So, that is an example of how alloying additions can bring about an improvement in the creep performance of a material. Another example is the addition of aluminum in titanium. So, the addition aluminum is added to titanium as a strengthener, and people have observed that aluminum encourages short range ordering, the development of a short range order in titanium under appropriate heat conditions. So, this particular graph, a plot, is basically between, it is a creep strain versus time. So, it is a creep curve, and what people have noticed is if you somehow increase the amount of short range order within the material, and the amount of short range order within the material can be improved by appropriate heat treatments. So, if increase the amount of short range order, then seems to be an improvement in the creep resistance of the material. So, for the same time, let us say same durations, for the same duration, the amount of strain experienced by the material with higher short range order is lower compared to the material with lower short range order. So, aluminum addition and combined with some appropriate heat treatments can allow us to tailor the short range order within the material, and that in turn can improve the creep resistance of the material. So, that is the significance of alloying addition. Of course, you can also look at alloying additions from a point of view of controlling the dislocation glide behavior. We know that solute atmospheres can form around dislocations. The solutes preferentially segregate around dislocation cores, and the trapping of dislocations by the solute atmospheres can limit the amount of dislocation glide. For example, in aluminum magnesium system, the magnesium atoms limit the amount of dislocation glide that happens within the aluminum matrix, and as a result the creep resistance is also increased. So, that is the role of alloying additions. So, to summarize some of, and just to point out one more example, alloying additions can also play or can influence the diffusivity of materials. So, we spoke about iron and nickel trace impurities increasing the diffusivity of titanium, leading to poor creep performance. A converse of this is, if you add alloying elements which reduce the diffusivity of your matrix element, so which means, so typically diffusivity happens by the motion of vacancies or the motion of atoms from one location to another, that is what is happening. So, you need atoms to move around for diffusion to happen. If the atoms are prevented from moving easily, then what would happen is your diffusivity will come down, and what people have noticed is if you add atoms with large atomic radii compared to the host element or the matrix element, then these large atoms prevent the motion of the easy diffusion of the matrix element, and because of which the diffusivity comes down. So, typical example is you can add molybdenum to some of the materials, or you can add niobium to some of these different elements, because these materials have a large atomic radii, and they prevent the motion of easy diffusion of vacancies, and in turn improve the creep performance. So, that is how you can improve the creep performance of material. So, we spoke about the role of grain size, role of microstructure, we spoke about the role of elastic modulus, we spoke about the role of stacking fault energy, and then alloying additions. So, these are many different approaches by which people either separately or in combination you can play around with these factors to improve the creep performance of your material. So, with that I conclude the lectures on creep deformation of materials.